Welcome to the NintenFusion podcast, a podcast that fuses past, present, and future Nintendo thought. I'm David, accompanied by my friend Jordan, and today we have a very special guest, our friend James from Nintensity. Real quick though, guys, before we start jumping in and talking about a couple of different things, I have a very important question for you. You ready for this?
Go for it.
Why did the tactician become a thief?
I don't know. Why?
Do you have any guesses, Jordan?
To steal the enemy's plans.
That was pretty close, but no. It's because he was Robin.
Ah!
A good old Fire Emblem joke right there. Character from Fire Emblem Awakening. Anyway, it's really good to have you on the show today, James. You've guest starred. Well, you've been a guest on a previous episode. We talked a lot about Xenoblade, you and I, a few months ago. So why don't you give a quick little rundown of who you are and why you're with us today?
Sure. So as David mentioned, I have my channel Nintensity. Before that was a thing, David, Jordan, and another friend of ours were on the same podcast together. And that was a lot of fun. But right now for Intensity, it's just really me talking about the video games I'm playing. It seems to be mostly Fire Emblem. That seems to be the stuff that people really want to see from me for whatever reason. Started with Three Houses. People really adored my Three Houses content. But yeah, so I guess if we're talking about Fire Emblem, I'm your guy, but not to say I'm any good at it. I just like to make jokes about it. And then I also have a manga anime podcast that I do with a good friend, Petter, called Umami Manga. So if you're interested in anime weeby type stuff, which if you're a fan of Fire Emblem, you're probably, those interests do collide, then please check that out. But yeah, I'm happy to be back talking with you guys.
Well, thanks for introducing yourself. I'll be sure to put links to your projects in our description so our listeners can go give you a checkout of you and whatnot. Try to get that good old YouTube algorithm to do something there. So Jordan, why don't you introduce our topic today?
All right. So today we're talking about Fire Emblem, obviously. Fire Emblem Engage just recently came out about almost 2 weeks ago now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, just about.
Going over our initial impressions, I will admit. So earlier in previous episodes, I was saying that I probably wasn't going to get this game. It just wasn't catching my interest or whatever. But then the reviews came out, and a lot of them were kind of sour on the game. And oddly enough, that actually made me interested in the game, because a lot of the sour reviews were more about how the game was kind of stripping back away from stuff like the school and a lot of the social link stuff. And it's well, that's the part of the game that I don't really care for. So if I get to move from map to map quicker, that's geared to me more specifically. Right. So,
yeah.
So I picked it up, but I'm only 4 chapters in. I'm not too far.
Gotcha.
I'm not super far either. I'm about through chapter 10, I think. So not really that far at all. James here is farther than the both of us.
Yeah, I just started chapter 14. So, I mean, not terribly far. I'd say a little more than halfway. But David's at a really important part in the game, I will say.
Yeah, I mean, the last chapter was quite fun, I think. But I don't think we're going to touch too much on spoiler content, considering none of us have finished the game. So you don't really need to worry about us spoiling anything absolutely ridiculous. But I'd say that we've all played enough of this game and past Fire Emblem games to really make a good discussion on how this game kind of fits in and if it's worth your time or not, if you're a Fire Emblem fan. Now, as for me, I was kind of excited for this game. I mean, I wasn't super looking forward to it. I didn't do the same thing I did with the Three Houses, where I pre-ordered the Divine Edition? Is that what they called it this time?
Yeah, I don't know. I heard a couple of names going around, but yeah.
So I didn't do that pre-order. I just walked into GameStop when the game released and I was like, can I have Fire Emblem, please? They're like, yeah, sure, here you go. And bought it right then. It looked interesting to me. I kind of knew right off the bat that the story was going to be pretty cheesy in comparison to other Fire Emblem titles, and I was kind of fine with that. And like Jordan said, what really kind of caught my attention and made me even more excited was that there's much more focus on the tactical maps this go around. And that's what I really, really loved about Fire Emblem. Because, I mean, as some background, my first Fire Emblem game was Fire Emblem Awakening. You know, that was a while ago. But that led me to play a lot of the other Fire Emblem games. You know, I sought out the Game Boy Advance ones and played the GameCube and Wii one, and, you know, have been playing the Fire Emblem games ever since, even though I kind of fell off with Three Houses and could not bring myself to finish any of those storylines for whatever reason. So really quite excited to talk about Engage here.
Well, I guess I'll just kind of give some of my initial thoughts about the game, like going into it. There was no doubt I was going to get the game, but I did kind of feel a little let down at the very beginning, especially at the reveal. I felt like it was really pandering towards the, I guess, already established fan base and not really moving the series forward. That said, as the months went by and we saw more trailers, especially one particular trailer where they introduced like the hub world and everything, my opinions on it totally flipped. And I felt like that while the story may not be great, at least that's what I thought going into it, and who knew about the characters, I felt like the gameplay was solid and actually maybe even an improvement from Three Houses, at least initially. So that's what I thought about when I went into it.
And I think that I felt the same way. You know, seeing those trailers really helped. Because, you know, starting with the 3DS games and playing a much more focused on the battle maps version, because, you know, the 3DS just did not focus on big, expansive hub worlds with crazy social interlinks and whatnot. It was much more focused on getting you in and out of battle. Whether or not you were doing all of the paralogs or side stories was totally up to you, but it felt much more streamlined and more interesting like older Fire Emblem games. So with Engage, it's really quite nice to see that return. And from what I understand about Engage, there's a ton of battle content for those of us that really like the tactical elements of the game. I don't know if you've unlocked the tower yet, Jordan, in the Somnial, but I think you'll have a lot of fun playing through some of those maps. Plus, they have a map creator that you can share with your friends.
Wonderful. I'll be able to make some really awful maps for people to play in. Try and get all your units to die.
Some crazy choke points and whatnot where you just get completely obliterated or something.
So is permadeath turned on with these custom maps?
With the custom maps, I don't know. I think you just play one map, and if they die, you know, it's like they just disappear from your team, whether or not they're actually dead or not. But I think they're just challenge maps that don't have permadeath if you have permadeath turned on. But those challenge maps also give you some decent rewards. Those rewards allow you to upgrade your emblem weapons, which we'll talk about some of the emblems and other things that make this game unique in a little bit. But what really stood out to me was like, oh, there's a map creator. And that's the first time Fire Emblem's ever had a map creator, right?
Yeah, as far as I am aware, that was the first time that they've actually done this and had some online interaction, like real online interaction. Three Houses had some of it, but it wasn't really much of anything. So yeah, I guess the next step for them is eventually do co-op mode, right? But
yeah,
it's baby steps.
How do you co-op a strategy game like this, though? You know?
Yeah, I mean,
like,
PvP.
Yeah, PvP. Yeah, exactly.
Ranked Fire Emblem, where you bring out your characters and you just fight each other on
that could be big.
Symmetrical maps. I mean, that could be fun.
I mean, I'm big within the Fire Emblem community, not anything else, but
not big for the whole world.
But
big
anyway.
for the.
Make it like Fire Emblem Heroes, where you have to like play gacha system to get your units.
Oh no! You lost me.
They have Fire Emblem Heroes baked in.
I mean, that's how you make money on it, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
True.
You're absolutely right.
And I mean, Fire Emblem Heroes has made a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So I guess it would work.
Funny enough, I thought when Engage was first revealed that there was a bit of a Heroes element to it. And that was another thing that kind of put me off to it. Is like, is this just the Switch version of Heroes? Like, I don't know, but I don't think that now. I think that this is certainly a continuation of the series. Maybe not the perfect game that I've wanted. for Fire Emblem, but in a lot of ways an improvement from what's already been done.
I mean, the only way they could make a true perfect Fire Emblem is to take a lot of these battles and a lot of these units with their really fun ability interactions and throw it into a story like Radiant Dawn or, some of those other older games. I think that if they really pushed on the super intriguing story like they used to, it could make for an absolutely phenomenal game. I mean, I guess I can't say for sure if the story of Engage is terrible or low tier compared to the rest of the games just yet, because I'm not quite far enough. But the GameCube and Wii games in particular got me very invested in the story very early. So if they could bring back some of that magic with the upgraded combat system with all these abilities and some of the new stuff they've added, I think that would be absolutely phenomenal.
So I'm going to say hot take here.
Okay, Jordan, let's hear it.
I think people went into Engage with too high of expectations for the story. As far as the rest of the franchise goes, I think so far this is pretty standard for Fire Emblem. Like Three Houses was really well written. Like that's one of its strongest strong points. So I think it kind of like set expectations a bit higher than what the franchise is usually achieving.
So you're telling me the story is more like Fates?
Yeah, it's a lot more like Fates or the Game Boy Advance games. Like, honestly, it feels like a Game Boy Advance story.
I don't think I'll say it's exactly like Fates. I agree with this slightly, but Fates is Fates. Fates has a lot of like bare bones kind of storytelling. Engage actually goes deeper into its world and whatnot, but it's still very simple in a lot of cases. And I don't know, it's not as deeply written as Jordan said Three Houses was to some people's enjoyment or dismay. I personally really like the writing and storytelling in Three Houses. I know not all Fire Emblem fans do, but for me, that was really what hooked me into that world in Three Houses. But with Engage, it's the gameplay, and really some of the characters have kind of grown on me over time. So I think it's doing its job as a traditional Fire Emblem game, but it is a bit of a whiplash from what Three Houses was in terms of writing to what we have now.
I'd say there's a lot of whiplash between Three Houses and Engage.
Character design.
Character design for sure. But like what really burnt me out with Three Houses were all of the mundane tasks that I could do in the academy, and having to like specifically teach and tailor all of my students all the time so that they could grow up to be good units, Like that burned me out. The story I thought was really fun and exciting, but I could not continue the story knowing that every time I finished a chapter, I'd have to go back and try to get some various multiple quests done. Fire Emblem Engage has kind of changed that, where I feel like the majority of my gameplay is far more invested in battles and figuring out what works well. And there are only like a couple of small tasks that I'll do on the Somnial and whatnot. So I feel like I can approach it in a much more bite-sized manner, where it's like, oh, I just want to do a map in my little gaming session tonight. And it works out really well in that regard.
Yeah, my views of Three Houses are pretty similar to David's. I do think Three Houses is really well written. It's probably honestly the best written Fire Emblem game. With the deepest characters and all that, but the pacing is so it's so rough.
I can agree with that. No, totally. I do think that Engage is kind of or showing like what the future of Fire Emblem can be, where you have the go from battle to battle to battle section of the game, but you also have the ability to go to this hub world and explore and interact with your characters. It's just not incredibly deep, or I'd say even rewarding in terms of like talking to the units and other things that you can do, say in the monastery in Three Houses. But I think there is a compromise that can be had in the future where you'd still have that traditional going from chapter to chapter, but also the occasional break, go and relax or go and talk and build up your units. I think that there can be a good harmony there, and Engages showing that does in fact work, in at least in some aspect.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, I totally find it funny that every time Fram and Clan are down by the swimming pool in the Somniel, like they say the same line every time you talk to them. And it's like, you want to come join us in the water or whatever they say. And I'm like, you've said this like after 6 battles in a row. Like, come on. Also, some of the support interactions in this game are really funny. Like, I think a lot of them are funnier than they are like endearing. So
Yeah.
I saw like some commentary online. I think it was like a tweet. I don't remember if I was on Twitter or Tumblr, but it was like, you cannot prove to me that Engage is not a comedy. Look at this interaction. And it was like one of the supports. It was so funny. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of good within Engage. I do think it's imperfect right now, but it's really fun. I think that it's a good step forward for the series in a lot of ways, but also like a sidestep in others, like we've been mentioning with the story and whatnot. But kind of moving past these initial thoughts, why don't we kind of talk about some of the main gameplay elements? You know, the big drive of this game that separates it from other Fire Emblem games are the Engage rings, right? And each of these Engage rings, which it's so funny that they're called Engage rings because it's like, are they engagement rings? Like they're getting married? No, they're not. But
that's another thing that.
Yeah, why Fire Emblem waifus and husbandos, right?
Yeah.
I am surprised, given like how Intelligent System is right now, that they didn't make it like a wedding thing. Or
Yeah,
I know, right?
It's true.
Hey, at least we're not making children units like we did in Fates.
I am so happy for that. I've heard some people say, "Where are the children units?" It's like, no, stop. Like, we don't need them.
I do not want to make another broken character like Lucina just because I married the right person.
Some people really like him, but it's like, did we not learn our lessons from Fates? Anyway, it's only a matter of time until the DLC they add the bride outfits, like the bridal outfits and groom outfits. They're coming. They're coming. I guarantee.
Yep.
Are they not saving those for Heroes?
Well, they have them in Heroes, but they're just gonna bring them here and Engage as DLC. I guarantee it.
Like there are extra units in Heroes, right? That are like engagement or wedding Lucina or something, and it's just Lucina with different stats in a wedding gown.
Yeah.
Like. And people have apparently spent a lot of money trying to get those characters from the gacha. So
and
it works.
And the bride dress is not uncommon for Fire Emblem. Like they've done it in previous games. I believe Awakening had one as well. Like you could get like a wedding dress and everything. But we're off topic.
We're off topic.
Emblems.
Back to Engage. Yeah, the emblems, these Engage rings and the emblems, each one of them basically contains, I guess, the spirit of a past Fire Emblem character. And there are 12 rings, and I believe they represent 12 of the past games. I mean, I haven't met all of them yet, but I have a pretty good idea who most of them are, and each one is from a different Fire Emblem game.
Yeah.
I think that they're a really neat idea to be able to kind of fuse together some properties of different characters. In past games, you've been able to kind of assign units together, right? And take advantage of that in some ways. Mm-hmm. And these emblem rings, I guess they are called emblem rings, not Engage rings, but they boost different stats, and then you can kind of fuse with the rings to get different abilities and attacks. And I think it's a really cool system and idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Going into it, I didn't think about it too much, just an overpowered thing. And yeah, it can be overpowering, but the game is balanced in a way that while you still have these superpower attacks, like, one time when you engage, it's only one time you can use that move. The other 2 turns that you have the Engage power up, you're just working with maybe slightly better weapon or up stats or something like that. It's not necessarily you're completely broken. And I like that. I think it keeps it interesting. It keeps it somewhat balanced, and you may think your unit's safe because they've engaged. No, that's not the case. You still have to be cautious, especially if you're playing on Classic. It just it doesn't break the game, and I'm happy for that, because that was a little bit of a worry going into it.
Yeah, so I'm pretty I'm not very far in the game yet, so they still feel pretty broken at the moment.
Fair.
I'm sure later on there's a difficulty spike. I've heard from friends that there's a pretty sharp difficulty spike around chapter 11.
Mm-hmm. I say so.
So
yeah.
I'm too early in the game to like make any criticisms on difficulty.
No, they are pretty broken in the beginning.
I'll
admit that. Especially a couple of ones are just what they do to certain characters. Like, oh my gosh, like this is, I don't know. Am I allowed to be using this? It seems like I'm cheating at this point.
Warp Ragnarok is one of my favorite power moves.
That's a good one. Micaiah's where you just heal everybody's HP to the full and you just go down to 1 HP. It seems like a big risk, big reward, but it's just like, I mean, if you're just smart and just stay away from the enemies, it's a minimal risk. like there is no risk to healing everybody in the party, and the character who uses that gets all the experience they would from healing all the people around it. It's
oh man,
it's
I
so
was about to point
broken.
that out. Yeah, you get a ton of experience from using that.
But it's not. But I mean, well, I can't say for sure if it's not as broken later on in the game, but I don't think the emblems themselves are as broken.
Yeah. One of the other nice things about the emblems is they also give characters access to weapon types that they normally wouldn't when they're engaged. And you can actually, I believe, inherit abilities that let you gain that weapon type. So it's really useful. Like with Micaiah, for example, you don't have very many staff users in the first several chapters of the game.
Right.
And once you get Micaiah, boom, you engage and you can suddenly heal characters. You don't have to use like the full heal one that James was mentioning.
Right.
But you can use like a single heal ability in a pinch if you need to.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it's really nice. Plus, is it Sigurd? I have such a terrible time with the names of some of the really old Fire Emblem characters. He's like the second ring you get.
Yeah.
He can really break mounted units because when you engage with him, he like extends their mobility by like 4 or 5. So they can just like cross the whole map. It's pretty
I'll admit I've cheesed a couple things with Sigurd's engage thing. I'll admit.
Yeah. Anyway, I think they're a really fun addition to the game.
Yeah.
I've heard that one of them really breaks another character.
Oh, really?
One of the thieves in the game, if you use this other emblem, and that might be somewhat spoilery, I guess, but thieves get extra damage, accuracy, and crit chance bonuses when they're in cover. And one of these emblems, their ability lets you put down a like 3-turn 3x3 cover. So you send the thief as far into the enemy lines as you can, lay that down, and then they basically kill everything.
Oh my gosh.
Because they're just hitting crits left and right, and they're avoiding every single attack. It's nuts. So I think it can break some characters, but I do think that most of the time the emblems are fairly balanced. They're only 3 turns long, so it's not terrible.
I don't think it's terrible. And I think they're in the beginning of the game, they have like these blue spaces like that can fill up your gauge, whatever it's called, with once you land on it. But later on in the game, they're harder to come by. At least I feel like they are. But actually, just I guess moving on from emblems, you mentioned thieves. The classes in this game are surprisingly a lot of fun. I didn't think they would be incredibly deep or really explore anything, but the farther I go into it, the more classes I find, and really the more classes I enjoy. Thieves being one of them. Thieves have gotten a huge, I guess, boost in how good they are. Before, thieves are kind of basic and not really sought after, at least in my experience.
Really only good for opening chests and doors so you don't have to waste keys.
Right. I guess maybe, what was his name in Radiant Dawn? Soth? I think Soth may have been good as a thief, but nothing like this. Like the thieves in this game, even the enemy thieves are just really, well, they're good and you got to watch out for them.
Yeah. Soth is one of the thieves from the Radiant games.
Yeah. But that's just one example of units in this game, and I think there's some really creative ones in it. So yeah, look forward to that, I guess.
I don't know if you've seen too many of the units yet, Jordan, up through chapter 5, but do you have a favorite so far?
Not really.
They're pretty basic at the beginning, I'll admit.
Yeah. I don't know. Like from a design perspective, yeah, they're all pretty basic so far.
And I think that most of the units at the beginning of the game are like your standard classes from
Right.
Fire Emblem games. You know, you've got like your knight, you've got your magic caster, your mage, you've got like the healer. Though I guess the healer Fran at the beginning, Fram, she's like a brawler / healer combo, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much everything else is like, these are your standard Fire Emblem units. I feel so bad for Vander because he sucks.
He really does.
Right?
He really does. He's probably the worst like initial unit I've ever seen. Because usually in Fire Emblem, as you guys know, you get like a unit who is already in their master class, is kind of there as your shield to help the player. And then eventually you get past them and I've outgrown you kind of a thing. But Vander, among all of I feel like out of all the Fire Emblem characters that have been like that throughout the series, Vander is the weakest one, I feel like. No offense to Vander fans. I know they exist, but I don't know, for me, like Vander was not great. He had terrible level ups and he just sits on the bench now.
They can't all be Titania.
No, they can't.
No.
They can't, unfortunately.
I wish they could, or just give me Titania in every game. She's awesome.
Gosh, I love her. She's awesome.
See, Vander's, the only thing he's got going for him is his personal skill is Alabaster Duty, which is only active if he's next to the Divine Dragon, the main character, and both units just get a critical +5 during combat. Like, that's all he's good for.
Yeah.
He's literally standing next to the main character.
Sorry, Vander, but it's just not working out.
Yeah, Jordan, aren't you already kind of dropping Vander even in Chapter 5?
Oh, I dropped him on Chapter 1.
Oh, there you go.
I knew immediately that I'm just going to outclass him later on. So all that precious experience points, none of it can go to him.
That's
none
fair.
of it can go to him.
That's fair.
Well, because he gets a kill and he only gets like 5 points, right?
Yeah. So he has killed maybe one unit so far. His entire existence is to stand next to the white mage and just be there in like a dire strait. Also, he's cannon fodder. So like if I need the enemy units to like approach me, then I'll throw him out.
Yeah. Smart. He knows his role. He knows his role.
He knows his role. I got rid of him pretty fast. Once I started doing some of the side missions where you gain a couple extra characters, like you hit the cap of how many characters you can bring out to the field. And I was like, all right, Vander, you're the first one to go. Bye-bye.
I guess in terms of units that I like to use, who I think are pretty good, surprisingly, Clan for me has really surprised me. I don't know what his actual stat growths are like. I'm sure there's people who have gone into the weeds since day one and figured out, okay, these characters are good, these characters are bad. But for me, Clan actually has some pretty good magic growth, speed growth especially. His speed is very good. So Clan has been good. Maybe I shouldn't say too many other characters, but I've got a pretty good bowman, a pretty good swordsman. One of the swordsmen you get around like chapter 8 or 9 is pretty good. Yeah, from what I found. He could honestly be an MC lord or a Fire Emblem lord all on himself, have his own game. Like I think he's like the reincarnation of Ike, I feel like. Yeah. Yeah.
My favorite units are always just the ones that move the fastest. So give me all the Pegasus Knights and all the cavalry. That's all I need. I just need to be able to move across the map.
I think you may really like Thieves this game, I think.
Do they? How fast do they move in this game?
Well, I mean, I think it's 5 spaces, but which is not it's not a ton, but they're really quick. So I don't know. Pick your poison. I mean, I also have a crush on the first Pegasus Knight you get. Oh my gosh, Chloe, yeah. I love her. Yeah. She's pretty great. She is. You mentioned Clan, and real fast, like, I don't know if you guys listen to the My Hero Academia dub at all. Probably not. Oh, yeah. He's Deku. Yeah. It's Justin Briner, and I was just like, all right, this little boy is Deku. I can't wait for him to say Plus Ultra or Texas Smash or something. I was streaming the game, and someone told me, I was like, oh, no wonder he sounded so familiar, because I couldn't remember where I'd heard his voice before. That was pretty neat.
I saw the day the game came out, a bunch of voice actors on Twitter were talking about how grateful they were for the opportunity. And a lot of them were like anime dub actors from like Funimation and stuff. So it was really quite cool to see a lot of their names appear in this game. So, but you know, we can talk a little bit more about characters and story and stuff in a bit here. My next question for you guys is, how are the maps so far? Jordan, why don't you start since you've got fresh eyes on the first 5 maps?
Yeah, there's not a lot of maps. So. I don't know. The maps still feel like pretty standard Fire Emblem so far. There's at least a lot of choke points, even in the early ones so far, so that's nice. And multiple paths to like approach to the end of the map.
Yeah.
So areas to fly over with your Pegasus.
I like how one of the first maps, like where they introduce Celica as an emblem ring and you get Warp Ragnarok, it's like, oh, you've been separated from some of these characters, and you just boom, a Warp Ragnarok just right next to them, and you're just like, hey guys, I'm back. Like warp all the way across the map. It's a very fun little moment because the bridges are out. But yeah, I do agree that the maps are fairly straightforward Fire Emblem. I mean, I don't really have any complaints about them so far.
No, I think they've been really great. And honestly, I'm surprised to say this. I think they're improving Three Houses. For me, when playing Three Houses, I didn't think it was too big of a deal, but I did hear the complaints of people saying, hey, these maps are too wide. There's too much open space. You know, it just takes too longer to beat the level, and it's maybe not as creatively designed. I could definitely see their complaints, especially now when you compare it to Engage, where I do feel like there's more choke points, there's tighter spaces. It doesn't take
more buildings to go inside.
Right. Well, yeah, and it doesn't take forever to get all the way to the other side of the map. I mean, it can take long. That's typical for Fire Emblem, but Three Houses, it felt like especially long. Actually, I don't know if you guys played the Three Houses DLC, Cindered Shadows, but the way the maps were designed in that game feels more similar to how Engage and really how other Fire Emblem games were. So in truth, Engage is just returned to what Fire Emblem is traditionally.
Yeah. One of my strongest memories of a Three Houses map is like you start in a forest and then it's just super wide open space with like no terrain or anything. Yeah. And you're just like, all right, just gotta bum rush to these enemies here.
Yeah.
I just remember things from Three Houses where they had like the school trial thing or whatever, where it was like this giant, massive open field.
Yeah.
Like it took 10 years to go across.
Right. There's like one little thing in the middle of the map. And that's like the only really landmark. Not so in Engage. The maps are varied. You know, the terrains are very much different as you go around the world. And there's one area or map in particular that I remember, and it was so unique, not just because of how the map was designed, but also the objective of the level was kind of different from what I had experienced in recent Fire Emblem games, and it really got my blood pumping and wanting to see more of that, creative level ideas. And I feel like in some ways, as the story has gone on, they have thrown in a little more creativity in the map design and level design.
I honestly feel like the Fire Emblem team at Intelligent really took a good long look at the 3DS and GameCube and Wii game map design and were like, what can we do and Engage to kind of bring back that feel? Like, I know the 3DS games weren't so long ago, and I guess like some of the maps in, Fates are also fairly basic, though I think that they were still interesting in a lot of places. But like, especially Awakening and like Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, there were a lot of very interesting things that they ended up doing with maps, and it really feels like Engage is like, we're going back to that, and I'm really grateful for that in comparison to what I have played of Three Houses anyway.
Yeah.
That was honestly one of my first thoughts, like playing through the game, beyond just the map design, which I think is pretty solid. I mentioned that so far they're fairly normal Fire Emblem maps, and I'm excited to play that map you mentioned, James, with the cool objective. But like, going to the Somniel and that place in particular, along with these map designs, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like I'm playing on my 3DS again, but with HD graphics on my Switch. The Somniel feels like a step up from, what was it, My Castle from Fire Emblem Fates.
To me, it feels like a fusion of the ideas in My Castle and the ideas in the monastery from Three Houses. So I really think you kind of get the best in both worlds in that aspect.
I agree with that. And it's so much smaller than the monastery. Thank goodness. The monastery was pretty in a lot of ways. I thought it was kind of fun to see a huge area that was kind of your hub world. But again, I got really burnt out from running from place to place and taking care of all of my chores and stuff. The Somniel is really fast to get through, and you can still quick warp to places that you need to go.
Yeah, and the quick warps aren't like these long cuts or loaded screens.
Right, right. I agree. Makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, and the Somniel has a lot of really awesome things on it too. Being able to still cook meals with your units like you could in Three Houses, so that you can get buffs and boost relationships between different units. Being able to do some physical training so that you could gain a couple of buffs to your stats if you want to try a different strategy on your next map.
I hate that button mashing one. Oh my gosh.
Oh, the button mashing, the mini games aren't good, but at least you have the option, right?
Oh yeah, the option's there. And I like the creativity, and not just this exercise, but a lot of the other ones that they have at the Somniel. To me, it shows that they're really trying to think of new ways to, well, at least new gameplay ways.
Plus, the little guy that you find at the altar that follows you around after a bit is really cute.
Do you know about Somni, Jordan?
I do not.
Little dog cat thing?
Oh, I saw it in an Arlo video.
Oh, okay.
I have not gotten it yet.
Okay.
I have no idea if it gives me any bonuses or anything yet, but I've maxed out its friendship and it just follows me around and is really cute.
Yeah, personally for me, I mean, that's just like S tier. This is the reason why you get the game, is for this adorable little thing. No, to be fair, there's not a whole lot you can do with Somni. You can have these little cutscenes where you feed it and you pet it, and then it farts and it shoots out these gems for you to collect, and that's about it. But it's just so wholesome to have it following you around as you explore the Somniel. I love it.
Yeah, it's very cute. I do think the Somniel is a great addition. It's kind of cute that they have a bunch of different areas. You can gather some items, and I mean, it's just cool to see individual little things like that everywhere. And I love how small and compact it is. Yes, I would enjoy an overworld that's a little bit bigger. I think that the ideal size of an overworldy area for me is like the first 2 floors of Peach's Castle from Mario 64. For a game like Fire Emblem anyway, where, that's not the main point, but can help you get to different activities or items and stuff. Like 2 floors of Peach's Castle would be ideal for me.
That's fair.
Or I guess the size of the observatory from Mario Galaxy. I think that's another really good sized area where everything is still self-contained. But one of the things that I actually kind of enjoy about the Somniel is going to the ring chamber. And I kind of like making those additional emblem rings that aren't like the actual emblems. But you get to pull, it's kind of the gacha system in this game, I guess. Yeah. Where you get to randomly get different rings that are different characters from the games that the emblems are from. And I was so happy when I got an Alm ring from the Celica collection. The first one that I pulled was silver, and the second one I pulled was gold. It was like, there's my boy. There's Alm.
Oh, so you do get more than just like the main lords from each of the games.
But they aren't spirits. They're like the emblem rings, but they only boost stats. So you can equip them, like you can equip the emblem rings on any unit, but they have very specific abilities, like by equipping this ring, this character gains +2 strength or something like that.
That'd be a really good ring, though.
Yeah, that'd be a really good ring. Most of them are only like +1 to 1 stat based on the character that you pull. But then you can also fuse the same character rings if you get multiples into the next tier. So, you probably will get a lot of coppers. You can fuse a couple of those together to get the silver. Then you can fuse a couple of the silvers to get gold. And then you can fuse some of the golds to get, platinum is the final one.
Yeah.
And you can't pull the platinum ones from the gacha. You have to make those.
No, you can pull them.
Oh, you can? Well, I haven't pulled a single platinum one yet, so.
Yeah, I've pulled a couple, but
anyway, there are like, what, 15 or so rings from each game, maybe fewer than that. But they're all like other main characters. So
Yeah.
you know, you make them from Celica and you get Alm and you get the other characters. And it's a nice little way to bring in those characters without having to put their models in the game and try to figure out how to give them emblem weapons, I guess.
Yeah. And I think this kind of reinforces the idea that this game is a celebration of the series. While it does act like its own game with its own story and everything, the gameplay specifically, I feel like, and these rings really harken to just the series as a whole and kind of celebrate Fire Emblem as a series.
I agree. Is there like an anniversary date or something that they were working around for this, or they just decide to make a celebration game?
The rumor was that this was actually supposed to release at the 30th anniversary back in 2019? Either 2019 or 2020. I can't remember. But I guess they couldn't make it, which is surprising that they would be shooting for that when, I don't know, would the game have been ready by then? I don't know. Anyway, that's the rumor, is that they were trying to shoot for that time frame, 30th anniversary celebration. But I don't know. I think I'm glad it came out when it did. And I think that it's still a good celebration and a good game, but in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, now, Jordan, since you were so against the performance issues and visuals of Three Houses, why don't you tell us how things have changed?
Well, it was mostly just performance issues with Three Houses. It felt kind of like an up-res 3DS game.
Yeah, do you know what engine they used for Three Houses?
I do not.
It was the Dynasty Warriors engine.
Oh, that makes sense, because like Koei Tecmo was pretty heavily involved with this game, with that game, right?
Yeah, I think so.
They were.
And now Engage is entirely built in Unity.
You can definitely tell that it's built more in mind with like the Switch. It's definitely it's performing a lot better. I think that I don't know why they chose the fonts that they did. Like, they're so basic.
I know. I agree. I'm glad I'm not the only one. I think the UI in general, I mean, there's some good UI, I guess, some good menus, but in general, it just feels so bland and boring. To me, I thought Three Houses was a little more creative in what they were doing with the UI and menu system. But yeah, this one is just kind of, it's not my cup of tea. And I feel like Nintendo in general has kind of been going down this route of generic, basic UI, or at least font. Am I crazy saying that?
Yeah, it feels like this was what they chose for the demo and they just forgot to update it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I could see that.
Like, just the title like font for Fire Emblem Engage just it feels like the most generic mobile app game.
I agree.
Like app text name text that you can find.
Yeah. Definitely not the part of the game that I enjoy. It was definitely off-putting when I first saw it.
But speaking of the font, just real fast, the Engage font, I had forgotten that I saw a tweet back in September. I fortunately had it saved. And somebody was like, I just felt like testing out the new Fire Emblem title font. And it was like an updated logo that said Fire Emblem Divorce. Underneath it, it says, Fire Emblem, I lost custody of the kids. Like, it's pretty funny. I'll share it with you guys in a minute. But the font is literally Century Gothic bold with a couple of small kerning adjustments. So
yeah, it's not a custom font at all.
No.
Which
No.
It's just weird to see in a professional video game.
Yeah.
There, I shared the tweet in our chat here if you wanted to take a quick glance at it. Anyway, the rest of the fonts as well are pretty basic and boring, but hey, at least the game runs super smooth and super fast, right?
It does. Like, the fact that you can just move around the hub world without like too many frame rate drops, and you can you don't have load screens everywhere is just a huge improvement. It's also interesting that like you can travel like each map in 3D afterwards, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So like they have the maps completely like rendered and made in 3D. How long until Fire Emblem goes full 3D?
God, good question. I mean,
Because like,
it kind of makes sense because when you're at the top view, it looks, you get a different perspective of the map. But then when you go into battle, you zoom in into that kind of, first person it's third person really, 3D map when you fight the unit. And so I guess Fire Emblem has always kind of been leading this direction ever since Awakening, actually ever since the Wii or the GameCube, with the Path of Radiance game, because they had the kind of same system there. So I think you could argue that maybe that is the natural transition, is to having a almost full 3D type situation. Not that I want that. I don't know.
I was just gonna say, previous games felt more like there was a definite like transition between like a 2D map to a 3D.
Yeah,
whatever.
I agree.
And this one feels like it's completely 3D. We're just at a 2D perspective, and then we switch to a 3D perspective.
Yeah,
and it's really smooth.
Open world Fire Emblem. When's it happening?
Open world. I don't want an open world, like, because like you gotta. I don't know. You probably got to keep it in a turn-based strategy system, right?
Right.
Unless they go full RTS.
Genshin Impact Fire Emblem.
Well, I was going to say like League of Legends Fire Emblem, so that you still have the overhead view, but you get full movement or whatever. Like, I wouldn't want that. Like, I do not want a MOBA Fire Emblem. Like, no way.
Well,
but
I guess
I mean, they'd make a lot of money.
I mean, of course they would. Any mobile type game where you pay for that with Fire Emblem characters is going to make money. Heroes has made a ton of money. Like, come on.
I will say that what my vision of a future Fire Emblem game has been ever since Three Houses is that you would visit your camp, which is the Somniel in this one, basically. You visit your camp, but that camp changes based on where you are on the map, based on what the chapter is. And that's basically what happens in Engage. Is after the battle, you explore the map itself. So I feel like you could have almost everything that's in the Somniel except the swimming pool and have it on the map itself, right after the battle or something like that, and explore that entire map. So I do think there is something to be said there, Jordan.
Yeah. And especially since some of the maps are actual like cities as well, right? Like you go to some towns and stuff. So you could have like open markets where you could buy stuff as you wander around, and you could go back to those places if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So the world feels more alive and open rather than just a series of individual maps that you go to. I mean, I think that would work. The one thing that really kind of makes me that comes to mind, I guess, is Tales of Symphonia. How you have that kind of openish map where you wander around, where you're kind of small chibi, and then when you enter an actual area, it's like a dungeon or a town itself. I think that Fire Emblem could open up the map to be more exploratory in that way. Still have like regions where you go to it and you like click on it and it starts a battle, kind of like the step-to-step map that they have in this game. But they could make it more open and let you visit towns and do other sorts of exploratory things within a system like that, I think.
Yeah. So I think that's, really exciting to see where they're going to go in the future. But for now, it definitely is nice to have these really crisp for the Switch graphics, and performance-wise, it's very smooth. The animations are really incredible. Not to say past Fire Emblem games were bad, but I don't think they've been this polished ever. Kudos to the team.
I'm surprised at how polished this game looks, feels, and plays. Like
it's pretty impressive, especially after Three Houses. My expectations were very low, and then going into this game, it's like, wow, so Fire Emblem can actually look good. Who knew?
James, I thought you were going to say, especially after Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, because that's where I was going to go.
Different beast.
Those games. Like I played a little bit of Pokemon, I guess yesterday, doing some shiny hunting, and going back to Engage, I'm just like, man, this game looks so much better. Like, come on. So I think the graphics are great, performance is wonderful, and really quite happy with how the game looks, especially for how late we are in the Switch's life. This is how like every game should be at a minimum, I think.
Yeah.
So now, I guess we could talk just briefly about the story. I know we kind of talked about some of our opinions about it earlier. Like it's still, at least as far as we are, or at least as far as I am, it's fairly basic. I kind of tune out parts of it because I'm just like, yeah, I know I've got to go find all of these rings. From what I understand, there's going to be a pivotal moment in the story in the next couple of chapters. So I might change my opinion on that fairly soon, but I don't know. It's kind of fun. It's very basic Fire Emblem, I think. But I also really enjoy the voice acting. I think the English crew has done a really great job. Some of the lines are fairly cheesy and are delivered, I think, specifically to be somewhat cheesy. And I kind of can appreciate that. Like I said, I recognize quite a few of the voice actors from other projects they've been in, and it's really exciting to see them in a big Fire Emblem game like this. So that's kind of my take on that. I don't have too much else to say because I'm not super far.
Wow, it's really cheesy. I don't want to say any spoilers for anyone who hasn't played the game. But there's a fairly early character death scene or whatever within like the first couple chapters, and I could not stop laughing through the scene.
I wasn't paying attention. I was just like, oh yeah, it's a death, whatever. It's gonna be Fire Emblem death dialogue. I know it.
All I'll say is that is the longest death scene I have ever seen. Like that took forever.
Yeah. You want to know how long it took? It took long enough that my screen on my Switch dimmed because my Switch gave up.
That happened to me too. Like, because I wasn't pushing any buttons. I was like, oh,
Switch is like, moving along. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, there seems to be in this story a lot of elements taken from previously written games. Awakening, Fates, at least in my opinion, particularly those two, they're kind of taking story beats that were in those and reusing them. Also Marth's game. It's just, I don't know. It was a little disappointing. I think I knew going into it that it was going to be disappointing, but it is still a little bit of a downer that it's not really an engaging story. But I think that despite all that, and despite how cheesy it is, because it is cheesy even in Japanese, especially in Japanese, I still find it enjoyable at times. Just how I find Fates and Awakening story enjoyable at times. It's the same with Engage. Like there's some chapters that I'm done with that I'm like, oh yeah, that was interesting.
So you brought up the Japanese, and I was actually going to ask you this because I've heard a lot of people online saying like, oh, the cheesiness is just the English version. Like it's just poorly translated, whatever. And obviously I don't know Japanese. So like I have to go to like someone like you to like ask how is it in Japanese?
So I've been playing both English and Japanese, so I'm able to compare. Like I've switched back and forth. They do change some things in the English dub, and you could argue that translation has taken a few liberties. But all in all, the characters are pretty similar to how they act in Japanese. And yeah, it's pretty cheesy. I mean, the whole your sweat is shiny. Oh gosh, maybe that's too specific. But there is a support where someone says, wow, your sweat's so shiny and beautiful. It's like, please shut up. Just stop. Yeah, that's just everyone's a simp, and it's no different in Japanese. Maybe some better performances, just because voice acting in Japan is so superb, but the writing is fairly on point.
Okay, so because like I've seen a bunch of screenshots of people posting like side by side comparisons, and it's like the official translation and someone else's translation, and it's more so what it sounds like it's more likely that the fan translations are just less cheesy than the official translations.
Yeah.
But the source material is still pretty cheesy.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what those comparisons are, especially if they have the Japanese on there. I can tell you how close they are. But
okay, yeah, I'll shoot you some messages later.
Yeah. But I'll just use an example real quick of one of the earlier characters. Alfred and his retainers, especially Etienne, have you met those characters yet, Jordan? I can't remember.
I think so, yeah.
So they're really obsessed with muscles. Like that's their whole thing. They want to get stronger. They want to get beefy. Even though they're
this conversation.
Even though they're sticks. Well, it's not so much just their conversation because that's all they ever talk about. It's just who they are. But in Japanese, they are like that. They are talking about muscles constantly. But Etienne in particular is like a different personality in Japanese. She's kind of a ojo-sama, which is, a princess kind of. She talks like royalty, whereas in English she kind of talks like a tough boy, tough tomboy situation. So there's differences there, and so they probably take their liberties in terms of how that character sounds, and so they'll change the dialogue a little bit there. But really, when Etienne is talking about how she wants to get ripped, she's basically saying that in Japanese as well. So there's a lot of that.
And then just so that you guys are aware, the team that did the dub is called Cup of Tea Productions, and they have done 87 different video games, starting with Tekken 5 clear back in 2004. They've done the English dubs for a ton of games like Tales of the Abyss. They did Xenosaga 2 and 3. They've done Tales of Vesperia, the sequel game to Tales of Symphonia. They've done a bunch of other games like Soul Calibur 5, Ninja Gaiden 3.
Any Fire Emblem games?
They've done most of the Fire Emblem games. Like they did Fire Emblem Awakening. They did Fire Emblem... I'm kind of going up through their list, but they also did like Xenoblade Chronicles X. They did Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice, Tales of Berseria, Fire Emblem Heroes. They're the team that does all of that. They did Fire Emblem Echo Shadows of Valentia.
Oh, they did Echoes. Okay.
Yeah, they also did Fire Emblem Warriors and a couple of other more recent games. Like they also did Three Houses. So like, I don't think it's necessarily the translation thing, even from the fact that it's like a pretty well-established studio, especially even within Fire Emblem. Plus, they also did Tales of Arise a couple of years ago, and Tales of Arise, from what I understand, has a really great dub. So
now, are these the localization people, or are these the people who are hiring the dub voice actors?
So this is Cup of Tea Productions, and they do the voice acting.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna say, because like, wouldn't Nintendo internally like translate
right.
Nintendo of America specifically?
Yeah,
but at least the voice production,
that's good.
The voice directors and whatnot, like they're very good. And
Echoes is probably one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best English dubs out there. So if that's the same studio, that's pretty impressive. And to be fair, like I don't think there's terrible voice actors here. Well, I take that back. There are some that I'm not a huge fan. There's this one guy who's obsessed with alpacas. And, oh gosh, I don't. Sorry, dude. I don't really particularly like your take on the character. But besides that, it seems pretty solid.
The voice directors were Christian Lamonte, Patrick Sates, and Kristen Parati, who was an assistant. And from what I can see on their like resumes, they've all done voice directing before for multiple games. Mm-hmm. So anyway, just kind of wanted to bring that up, that at least the voice acting came from a pretty solid studio.
Yeah. Can I mention one more difference that kind of gives me a chuckle?
Of course.
So Luis or however his name is pronounced in English, he's basically a spear knight, armored up and everything. One of his things is that he stares at people, he stares at people. That's what the English dub says, right? In Japanese, he specifically says, I enjoy staring at women. Like that's his thing. But the English stuff has changed it to where he just is a people watcher. It's not so in Japanese. So there are differences like that where they kind of maybe tame it down a bit, but it's not, they're not changing it from not being any less cringy. It's really the same, in my opinion. Do you mind if we go into characters for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
They have grown on me over time. They're not incredibly well written, I'll say, especially compared to the really complex stories we had in Three Houses. But I don't know, there is something very likable about their quirks and shortcomings. There's also some things that are very off-putting, like the whole simping for Alir and, you know, the whole shiny sweat thing. The number one fan club, it's just, no, I don't like that stuff. But besides that, I think there's a lot of fun characters to find in the story, and you're bound to find someone that you like.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I'm just a huge fan of Chloe, so just, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll find someone else in some of the other areas that I also really enjoy. I really also like one of the thief characters that you get fairly early on. I think she's pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also a really cool swordswoman that you get in like chapter 8 or 9. She's cool.
Wow. Glad we're on the same page there.
Good.
As is Fire Emblem tradition, there's also a character that is, you know, starts off really weak, but as you level them up, they become really strong. Like their stat growths are insane, and they are a farmer. So that's definitely what Awakening and Fates had as well. So that's a character that if you haven't gotten that yet, please look forward to that.
I think he's very sweet and endearing, but he's also somewhat annoying. Like,
oh yeah,
especially if you try training him, like he'll say things like, "I don't know if I'm supposed to be here." It's like, shut up, you wanted to come. I don't mind him. I don't know. I feel like the farmer from Fates was funnier. Like,
Mozu, yeah.
I'm just a random farmer that just, you guys were like, yeah, sure, join us. And he gets really strong for some reason.
She was sweet, but yeah, no, she's very good, yeah. But I think it's interesting with this one is that instead of being like a swordsman or a spear person, this one is a healer. So I like that different take on it.
Yeah, it's cool. Okay, Jordan, up to chapter 5. Who's your favorite character? You have to pick a favorite.
I have to pick a favorite. I'm just going to pick the Pegasus Knight because they move fast across the map.
Chloe! All right, good. We're all on the same page. Chloe's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say who my favorite is. Actually, that swordsman you mentioned, I really like her. I think she has a fun character. Maybe not the best unit for me right now, but very, very solid and very sweet character.
Princess Celine's also pretty nice. Her dress is weird, though.
She talks about tea a lot. Like,
she does.
Every conversation's like, tea. Oh, it's tea time. Have you tried this tea? It's like, gosh, I thought we left tea in Three Houses.
The other thing, I guess, is, you know, we tend to talk about sound design at least a little bit with these initial impressions and reviews. I think the sound design's pretty great. I think at least the sound effects and everything sound really impactful and very, very great. There's not a lot of dead space around particular actions. And I love the critical sound effect from when you go into battles, the way that their voice lines change and get really cool. They did a great job with that. Mm-hmm. And even if you turn off the battle animations, it's still really impactful for a critical hit. I will say so far, I'm not finding anything too standoutish about the music.
Yeah.
I think some of the battle themes are fine. You know, they work really well for what they are, but it's not like music from like Fates or Awakening where I am constantly remembering them.
Right.
And that might just be because I haven't played the game enough and listened to the music enough.
I don't know. No, I kind of agree with you though. When it comes to the music, nothing's really blown me away. On Somnio, there is a music box that you get special tracks after certain points in the game, and those are actually pretty good. They're really kind of calm songs to explore the hub world in. So I like those, but I haven't found too many battle songs that really pump me up and get me going, which is unfortunate because traditionally Fire Emblem has had great soundtracks, legendary soundtracks. So I don't know, maybe I just need to go back and listen to some of them, but I didn't have that issue with Awakening of Fates. I immediately love some of those songs, so we'll see.
I really like the song in the prologue with the throat.
Oh, that one. Oh. I thought you were talking about the opening song, the cheesy anime opening song. I was
no,
gosh.
No, the one where you're fighting like the big bad or whatever in the prologue.
Yeah, that one was pretty good.
Yeah, that one. No, I could sit through the opening video or whatever.
No, it's rough, man. It's so rough. Oh.
I had to put down my Switch and walk away for a minute. Like, oh boy, here we go. Hashtag FE time. Oh yeah.
Well, it sets expectations very well.
Yeah. You know this is going to be one of those cheesy anime video games right from the beginning. But hey, at least the maps are really good and the gameplay's fun.
I just had to double check that this was Engage and not hashtag FE.
Yeah, right.
Like, crap, did I get the wrong game? Well, and Jordan, didn't you have like a problem getting the game from Walmart or something on launch day?
Yes. So I went on launch day to Walmart and I'm like, and I couldn't see Engage in the case, but I didn't even like see any spot in the case for Engage. So I asked, do you guys have Engage? And they're like, yeah, we do. It's in the back. Can you get it? No. Why not? Well, you see, we don't sell new games until the Tuesday after they come out.
What?
That was that store's official policy. I'm like, are you serious? They're like, yeah, you can try GameStop though. There's one next door. I'm like, okay. What?
Okay, bye.
They would not let me buy the game.
That sounds like such a counterintuitive strategy. I don't even understand.
Don't you want the launch released?
I feel like launch sales are going to be bigger than any other time.
I mean, is to make sure that people have their pre-orders? I mean, like, just set some games aside.
You can't even pre-order from Walmart.
Well, then what's the issue?
Exactly.
I don't get it, man.
And I don't know if it's all Walmart, just that one in particular.
Like the guy that rearranges all of the display, he only comes in on Tuesday mornings or something.
Look, I don't know what
the
I'm
way
doing.
they were arguing is that it wasn't in their SKU system yet or something until Tuesday.
Interesting.
That's weird.
You got to prepare for that.
Isn't Walmart one of the biggest retail chains in like the world?
Yeah, and so they got so big they just don't care anymore, I guess.
Apparently. Video games are such a small percentage, and it's only the parents that come in with their kids, and the kids are like, I want that game when they see it in the case, I guess. I don't know. Kind of wrapping up, I guess, our discussion. We've talked about a whole bunch of different areas about the games, things that we've really enjoyed, things that we found really cheesy. So far, since none of us have finished it, has it lived up to the Fire Emblem hype? We on our old podcast, we used to say, make sure you always buy the new Fire Emblem because it'll eventually be crazy expensive and worth a lot of money or whatever, which hasn't been the case since the Switch because they make a ton of copies. But does it live up to other Fire Emblem releases? Is it a good game so far? What are you guys' thoughts?
I still feel like I just have very, very basic initial impressions, but it did deliver on what I've been saying so far, so I better pull through and actually play through this one.
Keep going.
It entirely depends on who you ask, clearly. I think those who love the relationship aspect of Fire Emblem, and I'm not talking S supports and things like that, more so the really getting to know your units, bonding with them, having a well-written cast. Yeah, I think you'll be slightly disappointed in that aspect. But of course, that depends on the person. But for me, I think I went into this game with just right amount of expectations. Like the gameplay is going to be great, the story is going to be so-so, but I'm going to have a good time anyway. And that's really what's happening right now. There's some things that surprisingly, I'm liking more than I thought I would. There's some things that maybe are not hitting as hard as I had hoped. But overall, this is a very good game. And I don't think it beats out some of my favorite Fire Emblem games, but I could put it in the, top 6 or 7. Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid game.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat in a lot of ways. Didn't go in with crazy expectations. I was like, yeah, I should probably pick it up day of, have a fun time with it, see how it is. And it hasn't blown me away with how absolutely incredible everything is, but the gameplay's been so fun. The visuals are really, really great. Yeah. I think that there are some endearing characters and some wonderful interactions. The story is super cheesy. I keep saying that, but it really, truly is so far. But at the end of the day, the thing that I remembered the most about the fun that I had playing through Awakening and even several of the maps on Fates and, older games like Radiant Dawn and Path of Radiance, what really brings me back at the end of the day is how good the maps are and how fun it is to strategize around your units. And I think that Engage really delivers on that front, especially since I do not have to teach my units how to use swords like I did in Three Houses. I know a lot of people really enjoyed the teaching aspect of Three Houses where you could really mold and craft your characters however you wanted. But I really, really appreciate the Fire Emblem games that are like, this character already is good at the bow, and you're just going to make sure that they are going to build that skill up. And if you really want to, you can try mixing and matching different abilities and change their masterclass into something that's totally different if they qualify for it. And, that kind of customization is what I like about Fire Emblem is, I don't have full and utter and complete control over my units like I do in Three Houses, but to me, that was too many choices. And that's where I really enjoyed strategizing Awakening and Fates is really working around what I'm given. And I think Engage is really delivering on that front. And I really like some of the characters so far. I've already mentioned her, but I'm going to say it again. I freaking love Chloe. So there you go. All in all, I think Engage is a great game. I'm excited to finish it. Maybe we'll do another episode in the near future, considering Nintendo apparently doesn't have much planned for this year, where we talk about the game after we beat it. So anyway, any other thoughts you guys have about Fire Emblem Engage?
No, I can't say I do really, other than I think this is, well, if you want to experience pure Fire Emblem gameplay, this is the game for you. If you're looking for a better story, you may want to start with Three Houses, maybe. I mean, it depends. If you're more of a gameplay first kind of person, then I guess I go Engage. But story-wise, maybe one of the other Fire Emblems would be better.
I think that's a good piece of advice.
I mean, it's nice to have a gameplay first Fire Emblem.
It really is. No, I agree.
For the first time in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
My dream is to have that, gameplay and story kind of perfectly complement each other, not have one dominate. You know what I mean? That'd be the ideal world, right? Kind of, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, it would be the ideal. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you want that, go back to the GameCube and wait. Or Awakening, I guess. Awakening's pretty good on both fronts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible. If you haven't bought Path of Radiance already, I mean, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck getting it. But hey, if you are interested in Fates or Awakening, you have until March to buy it digitally on the eShop before you're going to have to buy it used. So
how much of those prices
are going to be
up?
expensive?
Yeah. Oh, man. Such is life.
Man, our friend that used to do the podcast with us managed to get the 3-in-1 pack, right? For
I was so upset.
So.
I was not that he got it, but they had such a limited run on that, and it was special edition.
None of us got it except for him.
So frustrating.
Well, then he got to play Revelation 3 weeks before we did too. Well, so
and he also is incredibly fast when it comes to so he was able to blow right through it.
I think he blew through the first 2 stories within 3 days or something ridiculous. Anyway, but yeah, Fire Emblem games, at least the older ones, are crazy expensive. So if you want to play Awakening or Fates, definitely get them on the eShop before they're gone.
Or it looks like you can pick up them on eBay for $40 at the moment.
That's good. That's a good price. Get it now.
And then you got it physical.
Yeah.
So
I also recommend Echoes. I love Echoes, but that's
Echoes is very good. And, Jordan and I were talking about that a little bit ago. A lot of the fandom seems to not enjoy Echoes, but I think like the three of us here definitely really enjoyed Echoes.
Yeah.
So I think it's good.
I don't think everyone agrees with me, but it's my favorite. It's my favorite Fire Emblem game. My number one.
I love the characters. I think the characters in that game are so good.
You do have to go in with like the mindset that this is a remake of a game from like the NES.
Yeah.
So the maps are only so good.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Watch out for the maps.
The map design in Engage is better.
But they did such a good job, or they did expand a lot on the story and made it really interesting and engaging. Plus, they added new characters from the NES game, I think.
Well, not just the NES game, just new entirely.
I'm really hoping that after Engage, we get another Echoes game. Because, like, what's the point of having a subtitle for a Fire Emblem series and then only have one game in that subtitle, right?
Who knows what they're thinking, I don't think anybody could have guessed they would do a Fire Emblem Engage with a main character having dual hair color, and summons Marth, and I don't think anybody could have guessed that.
That is also a dragon again.
Well, like, okay, everybody could have guessed that one. Come on, that's like Fire Emblem bingo right there. But
that's your middle square.
Yeah.
So if they were to do an Echoes, which one would you prefer?
I think it'd be really fun to do Marth's game, but also Roy or Elwood's.
We've got Marth's been done.
Oh, true.
No, we need a Genealogy of the Holy War. The games that we haven't gotten in the West yet. I would love Path of Radiance eventually, but I really want to experience those Fire Emblem games that are still considered some of the best, but they've never made it out to the West.
I've already played those ones. So bring back Path of Radiance. I played them. I played the old ones in Japanese, and before like. I had no idea what was going on, but it's fine. All you had to do is just press A. And just eventually...
That number is higher than that number. We're good.
Yep.
That's awesome.
I'm not joking. I really did play through all the old ones in Japanese.
That's impressive. Well, real quick, was it good? Like, throwing story aside.
No.
It wasn't good. Okay.
Well, best story ever. So good.
He understood everything.
It's like it wasn't even there.
Yeah, it's like
I was literally inside the game. Like, I think those games would be a great choice for Echoes, but I also would really like to have a really great version of Roy or Elliowood's game.
I agree.
Again. I think that they could do a really interesting job and flesh out those stories. Because like we said, the Game Boy Advance games, the stories are okay. The maps are fun. The characters are good, but the stories are pretty meh. If they gave it a whole Echoes treatment, I think that it has the potential to be one of the best Fire Emblems ever.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I am surprised considering Roy's so popular because of Smash Bros. That they haven't remade his game.
You're right.
And released it outside.
It hasn't even come to the West.
Yeah.
They were like, here's Elliowood's game, but they never gave us Roy's.
Good enough. Like, what?
Elliowood is Roy's father, right?
Yes.
I don't have that backwards.
No, you're right.
Yeah. So we don't have the son.
We got the
game.
prequel.
We got the prequel.
My first game was Path of Radiance. I got it as a kid because I was really excited to play the game with Marth and Roy from
Smash
Bros. In it. And I almost returned it because there was no Marth and Roy.
Good thing
who's this Ike character?
We're such old Fire Emblem fans. I mean, I know my first was Awakening, but having played all the old games.
Well, I mean,
there's so many fans that started with Three Houses that I'm just like, whoa, I started back in 2014. Like, wow,
it's really funny because
ago.
I used to, when I was starting to do Fire Emblem videos, I say, I'm a relatively new fan. I started with Awakening. Yeah, I know. But now it's like, I started with Awakening. Whoa, he's been around forever. Which obviously depends on who you're talking to. But it is kind of funny how things have changed. I mean, time goes forward, as they say.
I know. It's like telling people that your first Pokemon game was Gen 1 and they're like, how old are you?
No, it's more like telling people your first Pokemon game is Gen 4 or something like, it's like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember, like, totally aside here, we're kind of just rambling, I guess, having fun, but I saw a TikTok like a couple of weeks ago that was like, I remember that they launched up Pokemon Black and they were like showing off their Pokemon and it was playing the somber sad music from Black and White. And they're like, I just remember being 5 years old playing through Pokemon Black as my very first Pokemon game. And then it like cut to another guy that's like, Black was your first game at 5? I was almost in college.
Wow. It's like, you know, people are born every day or something. It's crazy.
I know, it's crazy. Anyway, so I guess we're somewhat older Fire Emblem fans. Jordan's the oldest Fire Emblem fan among us here, but
I mean, I'm the same age as you guys. It's just I started earlier.
But your birth into the Fire Emblem fandom was much earlier.
Yeah, my journey was I picked up Path of Radiance first and liked it, and then went back and played the Game Boy Advance ones that did come to the West, and then pirated Roy's game. I played through that one because there was an English translation online. Then I was like, now I gotta play through the rest. And then I played the other ones in Japanese because I couldn't find an English translation.
So you've played Radiant Dawn as well, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
yes.
gotcha.
I did play.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Radiant Dawn was my favorite, but now I think Path of Radiance is probably my favorite.
I'm there with you. I like Path of Radiance more.
I agree. I think it's a better game. But I will say it's hard for me to shake the feelings that I had when I played through Fates. Just kidding.
Gosh, you are the ocean's gray waves. Just remember that.
Hey, I love Azura. It's a shame that she got such terrible dialogue and such a boring story.
Oh no,
I thought she was a great character.
Yeah, Cordon's got a tough life. You know, he's got a lot of love interests. You know, which brother or sister should I marry first? You know.
The brothers and sisters that I grew up with, or the ones that are actually my blood relatives.
Which they have, they're not actually related. Spoilers.
No. Spoilers for the third storyline.
That's the thing. You don't find that out until later in the game. So you're just like, incest is wincest the whole time. So
no, you don't find out until the third story of the game that you had to buy separately. Right. That it was
okay. So this is morally okay. All right. Great. Anyway.
Oh man, that game. I don't know if there's much else to say about Fire Emblem. We clearly are big fans of the series. Glad that Engage. Too many of them start with E now. Well, 2 of them.
You know, I guess real quick I'll say, and you don't have to include this. I'm gonna be interested to see what the total sales for this game are. From what I understand, coming out of Japan, it didn't quite hit Three Houses release numbers. Like pre-orders were higher than Three Houses, if I remember correctly, because I think generally the fan base was pretty hyped, especially the older fans were really excited for this. But it doesn't seem to have the same appeal, and maybe it's just when it released, but it doesn't seem to have the same appeal that Three Houses did at first to new fans or maybe even current fans. So it'll be interesting to see where it lands later on.
I'd say that the Switch's market is slowing down this month in January. You know, the big marketing pushes were all in December for Pokemon and other games that had come out in 2022. And from what I understand, even from like YouTube ad revenue, no companies, including Nintendo, make any sort of big pushes for anything that even releases in January. So I think it's a combination of the fact that we're in January, we already had the holiday season. So, you know, maybe some people are feeling a little burnt out, maybe spent a little too much on gifts for their family and friends and, you know, are trying to recover a little bit. And it might also just be that, you know, we are emerging from the pandemic. Three Houses was at that like weird point where it was like right before the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And then it was able to build up a lot of steam once people got all of their Switches for Animal Crossing. They started branching into other games.
Well,
and so now that people are going back to work, maybe there's not as much time or they're not as interested. I don't know.
I can't say exactly, but I don't think there was much of a spike when the pandemic actually hit. Although I can't speak exactly for Japan.
But I mean like a build up over time for like, at least here in the West.
I'm pretty sure Three Houses was pretty much just a 3-month window when it came out.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well.
I think people were really excited for Three Houses because it was the return to a console Fire Emblem game, which we haven't seen since Radiant Dawn.
That's fair.
But honestly, I think Nintendo sent this game out to die.
Yeah, I think you're also right.
Like David said, January is not a good month, and the marketing was awful for this game.
Yeah,
like
wasn't great.
We didn't get a January direct for the game. Like even anything. It was like, here's some trailers.
Nintendo put no effort in trying to branch out and reach people outside of like the Fire Emblem community for ads. Like, you guys kept talking about, oh, this trailer, that trailer. It's like, I didn't see any of them.
No,
like,
you're right.
I'm pretty entrenched in the franchised in Nintendo culture, and like it just never came up at all.
Yeah, it's a shame. And like, it's really mind-boggling to me too, considering Nintendo announced literally this week that they are not going to E3.
Well, they didn't announce it, did they? It got
like they
leaked.
came out and officially said.
Oh, did they? I think it's all still rumor, but it's from official sources. I don't think Nintendo has officially stated anything or officially given anything to IGN or VGC. I think they just have some really credible sources that have told them that.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, I was misquoting that. I might have heard into some of the excitement. The IGN article does say that they have heard from multiple knowledgeable sources that Xbox, Sony, and Nintendo won't be there.
And on top of that, so with this rumor in specific, what they're saying there is that they don't have like enough new games to really like support show floor presence, right?
Yeah.
So even if Fire Emblem were later in this year or whatever, like let's say it's Fire Emblem, Pikmin, and some other smaller, and by smaller I mean less than 5 million like copies franchise, like Star Fox or something. That those three might not be enough to like warrant show floor space anyway. Yeah, because you don't have something like Zelda or Mario or Pokemon.
True. So I guess it is possible that Nintendo's going to do a digital only video presentation. They just won't be physically at E3.
It's possible, but every time they skipped on E3, they have not done a June Direct. I will put that out there.
Jordan, come on. They have to show us Metroid Prime 4. Like, it's time, right?
At this point, I am in the camp that Metroid Prime 4 is a Switch 2 exclusive.
Yep. Yeah,
I agree. Actually,
it's gotta be. This reminds me a lot of the 2015, 2016 lead up to.
Oh yeah, that era.
Oh gosh, it was just deprived of really much, except for one title, maybe every 6 months or so.
Yeah, Jordan and I literally talked about this last week or on our last episode.
I think
just how awful that was.
And we were doing a podcast that time too. So
yeah.
James, do you remember what we put on our top 10 games that year?
I don't. What did we do?
Star Fox Guard.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Because I think we refused to do. Oh god, what was Star Fox? I want to say Star Fox.
No, Zero was on there too.
Oh, Zero was on there too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we did both of those.
Wow.
Now I need to go through all of my old documents and see if I can find those show notes. But anyway, yeah, it was terrible. And it really feels like this year, even though it has the big hitters like Zelda and Pikmin 4, like it feels like we're entering that weird in-between phase that Nintendo seems to always go through into a new console, where it's like, yeah, there's only a couple of things coming. I mean, we're getting amazing things, don't get me wrong, but I really do feel like we are at the end of the Switch's life and we're getting a Switch 2 even probably next year. And these E3 rumors from official sources just really confirm that to me.
I still think we're going to get some small like surprises ahead of us, because even when like the 3DS was closing up, they revealed the remake to both one of the Mario and Luigi series as well as Luigi's Mansion, right? So I could see us maybe possibly getting something like Kid Icarus or Metroid Prime trilogy, or even just Metroid Prime 1 remake. Definitely not a Zelda remake.
No.
Zelda's taken this year.
You know, I wonder if they would dare do a dual release type game like we did with Breath of the Wild. I don't know. Like,
so it comes down to, will it be backwards compatible or not for that?
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. And we want it to be backwards compatible, so then there wouldn't be any need to do the dual release, really, right?
If Nintendo is slowing things down to prepare for the next generation, that makes me a bit concerned for backwards compatibility, because if it was just backwards compatible, then there's no reason really to slow down, right?
Yeah. You make a fair point. At least keep the Nintendo Switch Online system in some aspect. Don't make us rebuy everything over again, please. Anyway.
But money.
Money speaks volumes. So I guess next Fire Emblem game will be in 2-3 years, and it'll be on a different system. Is that what I'm understanding?
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. If that's what it ends up being, I guess.
I'm at the point where I can't predict when the new system will come out anymore, because this generation is going on for a very long time, and Nintendo has not stated. I don't know. Maybe this fall they'll finally announce the Switch 2 after Pikmin 3 is released and they don't have anything else in the pipeline.
Cool.
But at the same time, Nintendo also said they're going to ramp up production. They plan to sell more units this year than last year.
I did hear that. But we do have Zelda coming out, and they expect that to be really big. So that could be a reason.
Yeah. Nintendo does what they want. I swear I've said those words many times, even on our past podcast. So we'll have to see what ends up happening. And of course, we'll talk about it when it does. But anyway, I don't know if there's much else to really talk about when it comes to Fire Emblem Engage and the future of Nintendo consoles. I think we've pretty much exhausted our topics, don't you guys think?
Yeah.
Or unless you guys want to keep going.
I'm good.
No, we're good.
All right. I mean, I think we've been recording for an hour and a half now. So really fun, long episode. Really glad that we've had you on the show, James. And yeah, I think it's been a great, productive conversation on Fire Emblem and I guess the future of Nintendo now. I guess I'm going to have to write both of those in our episode titles since we touched on it.
Or, I mean, if you need to take it out, feel free. It's fine.
No, I'm happy to keep it in. Don't you even worry about it. It's just that took a turn and it was interesting. But anyway, James, why don't you remind people where they can find you?
Yeah, Nintendo City, mainly on YouTube, but you can also find me on Twitter. I have a TikTok, actually, but it doesn't really engage as well. I don't know. I thought I was pretty funny, but apparently I'm not funny to the newer generation. So there you go. But I mainly on YouTube, sometimes on Twitch, but I've been streaming Fire Emblem Engage on YouTube every Friday. So if you want to check that out and see where I'm at, come follow me there.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us again, James. We've had a really fun time chatting with you about Fire Emblem and such. And thanks to all of our listeners for listening to this episode of the NintenFusion podcast. We've sure had fun talking about it. Feel free to check out our Discord and chat with us about this type of stuff by going to nintenfusion.com/Discord. That'll send you an invite right into our server. And of course, please be sure to leave us a review, a like, a comment, whatever the system you're listening to us on has. Doing so will just help the algorithm promote the show so that other people can find it like you. And with all that said, thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thanks for having me.